So I wanted to say a little bit about measurements. Now, I've been working in batteries most of my life, and I'm a research chemist, as you know. So I understand the importance of measurements, I really do. But I also understand the difference between trying to convince somebody of something and just exploring something for its own sake and for you. A lot of the videos I do are just exploring things. It's me exploring stuff. It's not trying to convince everybody or anybody of anything. I'm just doing something and sharing it with you as a point of interest. And so measurements in that case are really to satisfy me. Now, I look at things in a way. Everybody looks at things in their own way and in a different way, and different things are important to them. I think of this thing in a particular way. I tend to use actually more of the water analogy. And I think of those capacitors as being little cups of water being filled up and drained. Once they've gone past that diode system, they can't go back. It's like a one-way valve. They can only flow in one direction to fill up that cup, and you can empty that cup to use that water for some reason. It's how I think about it. Now, people say that you need to put it under different load conditions and do different kinds of measurements. Well, maybe if it was you and it's what you were doing with a standard generator, that's exactly what you'd want to do. Me, I don't want to do that because I think of it in a different way. Now, there are problems with this, because people aren't looking at it as a different thing. They're actually trying to put a round peg into a square hole. They're missing those problems. That valve analogy that I mentioned earlier actually becomes important here. When this thing first begins to spin and those capacitors are empty, the voltage is very low, and it will push the water past the valve because there's not much pressure on the valve. As those capacitors rise in voltage, if you like, the pressure on that valve gets greater, so the push has to be harder to get past the valve. What that means is, when this thing is turning at low wind and low power, the first few volts flow out easily. As the capacitors charge, they of course begin to discharge once this is actually not turning anymore. And once they discharge to a certain level, they can charge again. But at that point at where they're beginning to discharge, if the wind picks up again, it's very low. It can't push the extra energy past that valve because the valve pressure is too high. So we're losing energy there because the capacitors are acting as a backward valve, if you like, on what's being generated. And that's an issue. We have to do something with that, or we'll lose more energy as the capacitor voltage increases. Now, of course, people have missed that. People have missed that because they're not thinking about it in the way that it's been built. They're thinking about it in the way that they understand. Because the damn thing's full of diodes. It's like a check valve. It can't go back. All of that power goes into the capacitor, and we can drain the capacitor like you drain a battery. It's going to make no difference if I put an inductive load or resistive load on it. It'll make no difference at all, because I put that on past the capacitor. Where the problem is that check valve system that I was talking about. That's where the real problem exists. But like I say, that's missed by you because you're looking at the square peg round hole scenario rather than thinking about what's actually being built and what it is actually doing at its basics. Or at least that's what I believe. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm saying I believe that. And because I believe that, that's the way I'm working with it. And because I believe that, those are the measurements I take of interest to me to help me progress what it is that I'm doing. If you're thinking about building something like this and you want to go ahead, you're going to face the same problems, and you'll take measurements that are of interest to you. If you want to wait until the measurements taken are the measurements you want to convince you to build something like this, well, the chances are you're going to wait forever, because the chances are I won't do that. Now, I don't not do that to be big-headed. I do that because I'm exploring this for my own reasons and sharing it for you. Anyway, I hope that explains why I don't take the measurements that you want to take. There are basically two reasons. One, I've done that before and it gets incredibly tiresome and you waste a huge amount of time arguing about measurement techniques. And the other is, it's an exploration for me anyway, and I'm not aiming to convince you of anything. So I hope that helps, and thank you very much for watching.